They told me I was adopted. But no one said it was a payout deal between families. My birth mother didn't give me up, she was forced out. And the woman who raised me? She cashed the check and buried the truth for 49 years. It was supposed to be just another weekend visit. My parents had asked me to help clean out the attic, decades of boxes, photo albums, and forgotten furniture stuffed into the space above the garage. I didn't think twice. I'd always been the one who showed up when they needed help. The day was quiet, dusty, nostalgic in the harmless way. Old VHS tapes, my childhood toys, my dad's college yearbooks. Then I found it, a plastic folder tucked behind a moldy box labeled Winter Linens. Inside, a birth certificate. At first, I didn't notice what was wrong. It had my full name, my birth date, but not my parents' names. Two strangers were listed, Elizabeth and Hallie and Jacob Daniel Moore. I blinked, checked again, thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone else's file. But then I saw the hospital name, in Arizona. I was born in Oregon. And the file didn't stop there. There was a legal form. A court seal. An adoption order. Finalized 2 months after the date I thought was my birth. My hands went cold. I sat there on the attic floor, surrounded by insulation dust and a pile of faded Christmas decorations, holding a truth no one had ever spoken. I was adopted. But no one had told me. Not once. Not ever. I drove down from the attic and straight into the kitchen where Mom was wiping down the counters like it was just another afternoon. She didn't even flinch when I asked. She looked at the folder in my hands and gave the smallest sigh. I guess you were bound to find out eventually, she said. No tears. No emotion. No apology. Dad came in from the backyard, and when I confronted him, he said the same thing, almost word for word. We were going to tell you eventually. Eventually. I was 49 years old. It wasn't just the secret that broke something in me. It was how unsurprised they were. Like it was a box they forgot to check, not the foundation of my entire life. I asked why. Why hide it? Why never say a word? They looked at each other. Then Mom said something I'll never forget. Because it was complicated. And we didn't think it mattered anymore. Didn't matter. I wasn't just adopted. I was lied to. My whole life had been built on a half-truth. A clean version of events they decided was enough. And in that moment, standing in the kitchen I grew up in, with the people I thought were my parents, I realized something else. They weren't surprised because they didn't feel guilty. They felt justified. That was the moment I knew. There was more. After that weekend, I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together the thousands of small, quiet inconsistencies I'd ignored over the years. And once I started noticing them, I couldn't stop. Like how my baby photos didn't start until I was almost a year old. How no one in the family ever really talked about Mom being pregnant with me. How Dad once joked that I was a late arrival at a Christmas party when I was a kid, and then brushed it off like nothing. Or the fact that every time I asked about my birthday, my parents told me a different story. One year it was a home birth. Another year it was a blizzard and they barely made it to the hospital. I thought they were just being forgetful. Now I realized, they weren't forgetting, they were improvising. I tried to bring it up with them again, but they shut down fast. Dad said it was better to let the past stay buried. Mom said, you're still our son. That's all that matters. But it did matter. Because if I wasn't their biological son, then whose was I? Who were Elizabeth and Jacob, the names on that birth certificate? I started digging. I requested my full adoption file from the county courthouse in Arizona. It took weeks, forms, proof of ID. When it finally arrived, it wasn't thick, just a few pages. Most of it was redacted. But there was one detail that made my stomach turn. The adoption had been filed not by an agency, but by a private lawyer. Private adoptions are legal, but rare. Especially in the 70s. And even rarer when the biological parents are still alive. There was a note attached to the file, a typewritten memo dated 6 weeks after my birth. Consent was signed under duress. Parties agreed to confidentiality. No further action recommended. Duress. That word echoed in my head for days. What kind of situation would force someone to give up a child under pressure? The memo listed the name of the attorney, Daniel K. Ford, now retired. I found a P.O. box in Tempe connected to his practice, and after a few letters, I tracked down his daughter, a nurse living in Flagstaff. She told me her father had passed away a decade ago, but she remembered something. Said when she was a teenager, Her dad once mentioned a messy case involving a baby, two feuding families, and a deal no one was proud of. A lot of people pretended it never happened, she said. My dad didn't like talking about it. Said it felt more like a cover-up than an adoption. A cover-up. That word hit harder than I expected. Because suddenly it wasn't just about the adoption. It was about shame, secrecy, something deeper. I started wondering, was Elizabeth forced to give me up? Was she a teenager? Was Jacob abusive? Were there threats involved? Money? And then, completely by accident, I found something that cracked everything open. A photo. Not in a court file. Not online. In an old high school yearbook I found at a used bookstore 2 blocks from my apartment. It was a random impulse. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just browsing old local schools, hoping maybe to spot a name, a face. But there she was. Elizabeth Halley. Senior, 1974. National Honor Society. Drama Club. And next to her, circled and penned by some student decades ago, Jacob Moore. Varsity jacket. Smiling. Arm around her waist. But that wasn't the part that made my hands shake. It was the person standing behind them. My mother. Smiling. Younger. Cheer captain. Same school. Same year. She had known Elizabeth. They'd gone to school together. They'd been friends. And she had never told me. This wasn't an anonymous adoption. This was personal. And suddenly, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. Or who she really was. I kept that yearbook open on my kitchen table for days. Every time I walked past it, my eyes went back to the photo, the trio that had defined my existence without ever meaning to. Elizabeth, smiling with that open, youthful glow. Jacob, all cocky and confident, like a teenage football star from a movie. And my mother, just a few inches behind them, hands clasped, eyes shining like she belonged. They were all there. All in on something. I started calling old classmates listed in the back pages of that yearbook. Most didn't remember much. Some had passed away. But one, a woman named Denise McAllister, did. She hesitated when I first asked about Elizabeth Halley. Then she asked who I was. I told her I was working on a family history project. A half-truth. I remember Elizabeth, she said. Sweet girl, quiet, real smart, kept to herself after, well, you know. I didn't know. After a pause, Denise lowered her voice. She got pregnant senior year. Big scandal. They tried to keep it quiet, but this is a small town. Everyone knew. My stomach dropped. And Jacob? I asked. Golden boy. Football scholarship. Didn't want anything to do with it. His parents were furious. Real churchy types. Threatened to disown him. Then it just disappeared. No baby. No follow-up. She left town not long after graduation. Denise's voice softened. Poor thing. I always wondered what happened to her. I thanked her and hung up. My hands were shaking again. So it was true. Elizabeth had been pregnant. With me. And Jacob had walked away. But what about my mother? Why was she in the photo? How did she go from cheer captain to raising someone else's child in secret? I went back to the yearbook. Dug deeper. Found more clues. Clubs. Committees. Events. Elizabeth and my mother had been on student council together. There were photos of them side by side at fundraisers, car washes, dances. They'd been close. Maybe best friends. So what happened? The breakthrough came through a forgotten box of letters I found in the attic during a second visit. My mom had insisted she already sorted it all, but I checked anyway. And there it was, a bundle of envelopes tied with faded blue ribbon, buried under old quilts. They were all addressed to my mom. From Elizabeth. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, full of emotion. Most dated between June and November of 1974, right after graduation. Right after she left town. I sat down on the attic floor and started reading. June 18, 1974. Dearest Ruth, I don't know where else to turn. My parents are livid. Jacob won't even look at me. They say I've ruined everything. I think they're trying to send me away. Somewhere no one will ask questions. Another letter, July. You were the only one who stayed kind to me. Everyone else pretends I don't exist. I don't know what to do. They keep talking about arrangements. About deals. I think they're trying to decide what happens to him, to my baby, without me. Then October. I signed something. I didn't even read it. I was crying too hard. They said I had no choice. Jacob's father said it was the only way to protect everyone's reputation, that the baby would go to a good home, someone I could trust. The last letter, November 1st. I miss him already. I heard he was taken back to Oregon. I pray that whoever has him will love him, will fight for him, will tell him the truth someday. The letter ended without a signature. But it didn't need one. It was clear. Elizabeth hadn't given me up. She had been silenced. And the person she trusted to protect me, to fight for me, was the same person who'd stood in that yearbook photo, smiling just a little too close to Jacob Moore. My mother. And now I had to ask, what did she do to deserve that trust? And why had she buried it for 49 years? I waited a week before I brought the letters to my mother. Not because I was unsure. Because I was angry. And I knew if I walked into her house with that fury burning in my chest, I'd say something I couldn't take back. So I let it simmer. I sat with it. Reread every word Elizabeth had written. Traced the handwriting with my fingers like it might give me more answers. Then one Sunday afternoon, I drove over with the bundle in my hand and a knot in my stomach. She opened the door with that tight-lipped smile she'd always used when she didn't want to talk. I didn't ask to come in. I walked straight to the kitchen table and laid the letters out one by one. She looked at them. Didn't touch them. Didn't sit. I found these in the attic, I said. No response. I know who Elizabeth was. Still nothing. I know about Jacob. About the pregnancy. About the arrangement. She closed her eyes, just for a second. I thought maybe she was praying. I wasn't supposed to find this, I added. Was I? No, she said quietly. You weren't. For the next 30 minutes, she spoke in fragments. No tears. Just defeat. She told me how Elizabeth's parents had tried to send her away, how Jacob's family wanted it all covered up, how Elizabeth had refused to terminate and been labeled a problem. And how she, Ruth, had stepped in. They wanted her gone. She had nowhere to go. And I had nothing to lose. I asked why she never told me. Because it was never supposed to be about me, she said. I was just the vessel. The backup plan. They thought I'd raise you and disappear into the background. She paused. But I loved you. From the minute they handed you to me. I couldn't let go. I wish I could say that softened me. That I forgave her right then and there. But all I felt was rage. You let me grow up not knowing who I was, I said. You made me think this was my whole life, a life I didn't even have the right to understand. She didn't argue. Just nodded. And for once, I saw her not as a mother, but as someone else's scared teenage friend, trying to do the right thing and failing in every way that counted. I left without another word. But I wasn't done. I still hadn't found Jacob. And I needed to look him in the eyes. So I dug. Old sports archives. Alumni networks. Public records. Eventually, I found a real estate firm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a man named Jacob Moore, same birth year, same middle name. I called. Left a message. No reply. So I flew down there. No appointment. No warning. I walked into the office in jeans and a wrinkled shirt, hoping to pass as a potential buyer. When he walked out from his glass-walled office, I recognized him instantly. Older, grayer, but the same smug charm from that yearbook photo. He smiled like I was a sale waiting to happen. Looking for a new home, he asked. I stared for a long second, then said, no. Just the one I came from. His brow furrowed. I think you knew someone, I added. Elizabeth Halley. He froze. Just for a moment, but it was enough. Then he said, I'm sorry, who? I pulled the letter from my jacket pocket. The one Elizabeth wrote in October 1974. I didn't hand it to him. I just read the last lines out loud. He went pale. I don't know what this is, he muttered, trying to wave me off. I think you're confused. No. You're the one who was confused, I said. Confused enough to let someone else clean up your mess. He tried to leave. But I didn't follow. I just stood there in the middle of the showroom floor, voice steady. You don't get to pretend this didn't happen. You don't get to keep living like the past died quietly. And then I walked out. It wasn't satisfying. Not yet. But it was a start. 3 days after I left Tulsa, my phone rang. Unknown number. Oregon area code. I almost didn't answer. But something in me, call it instinct, call it fate, told me to pick up. Is this Matthew? The voice asked. A woman. Older. Nervous. Yes. My name is Anna. I was friends with Elizabeth. My knees buckled. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. She told me she still lived in the town where they'd grown up. She ran the church charity now, the same one Elizabeth's parents once funded. Said she'd heard someone had come asking about the past. I always wondered if you'd come, she said softly. Elizabeth talked about you. Not often. But enough. I asked if she knew what happened after Elizabeth left town. There was a pause. Then she said, she came back. That stopped me cold. 6 years later. Quietly. She didn't tell anyone except me. She wanted to see you. To explain. Why didn't she? She saw your mother at the grocery store. With you. Said you looked so happy. She said, she couldn't risk breaking that. I didn't know what to say. She watched you grow up from a distance. Drove by your school. Left birthday cards at the post office box. But your mother never replied. She stopped after a few years. I felt like I was underwater. Anna asked if I wanted to see her. She's still here. She never married. No children. I booked a flight that night. When I got to Anna's house, Elizabeth was already there. Gray hair, tired eyes, and a tremble in her hands when she saw me. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then, finally, she said, I didn't want to be a ghost in your story. I told her she already was. We sat for hours. She told me everything. Her parents had forced the adoption. Jacob's family threatened legal action. Ruth had been the only one who didn't turn her back. She promised to raise you like her own, Elizabeth said. I thought it would be enough. I asked why she never fought harder. She looked down. I was 17. Alone. Scared. And then, I saw how she loved you. I didn't want to ruin that. I told her the truth. That my childhood had been a shadow, never quite right, never fully mine. That I'd always felt like I was waiting for someone to explain why I didn't belong. We cried. Not in a movie kind of way. Just slow, quiet grief for the years we lost. Before I left, she handed me a small box. Inside were baby photos. Letters she'd written and never sent. And a necklace with my initials, MJH. Matthew Jacob Halley. My son, she whispered. If you'll still have me. I hugged her. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I felt whole. But the story wasn't over. Because when I returned home, something else was waiting. A letter. From Ruth. Not a note. A full confession. She'd seen the flight confirmations. Guessed where I'd gone. And maybe she knew, deep down, that the truth was too big to hide anymore. She admitted everything. That Jacob's family had paid her off. That she'd promised to keep the child hidden, even from Elizabeth. That she loved me, yes, but also saw me as a way out. A chance to have a family without ever carrying the shame of her own choices. She said she was sorry. Said she was proud. And then, at the very end, she wrote, if you never speak to me again, I'll understand. I didn't. But not out of hate. Out of clarity. Because now, finally, I knew who I was. And the last chapter was mine to write. The funny thing about closure is that it rarely looks like justice. Sometimes, it looks like silence. But I didn't want silence. Not this time. So I made a decision. I wrote my own version of the truth. Every lie. Every hidden letter. Every fact I'd uncovered. I framed it like a family history, not bitter, not angry, just the truth, in full. And then I sent it. To everyone. Every cousin who'd stopped inviting me to gatherings because Ruth said I was difficult. Every church member who'd praised her for being a devoted single mother. Every old friend of Jacob still sipping bourbon in golf clubs, proud of their high school golden boy. I didn't send it for their forgiveness. I didn't send it for shock. I sent it because I wanted the lie buried. Publicly. Let them choke on it. Let them sit with the version of Ruth they didn't want to see, the one who'd signed a deal in someone else's blood and smiled for photos afterward. I didn't stop there. I contacted the local historical society in my hometown, the one that published the annual alumni feature. I told them I had a story about Elizabeth Halley. About a teenage girl who was erased for loving too deeply. They ran it. Full-page spread. Her photo beside mine. And the headline? The boy they buried. The woman who loved him anyway. I never heard from Jacob. But I did get a call from his son. Apparently, he'd read the piece. Said he'd grown up hearing only half-truths about his dad's past. That he always felt something was off. He thanked me. Said he was sorry. I told him I didn't need sorry. I just needed someone to finally say it wasn't okay. As for Ruth, she stayed quiet. I didn't block her number. But I didn't call either. Then, 2 months later, I got a voicemail. "I saw the article," she said. Her voice cracked. "You always were braver than me." I didn't respond. Because by then, I'd already moved. Sold the house. Started over. I bought a little place near Elizabeth. Nothing fancy. Just peace. We'd have coffee on Sundays. Talked about everything but the years between us. Sometimes, she'd ask if I hated her. And I'd say, no. But I hated the silence. She understood that. On my birthday, she handed me a new necklace, silver this time, heavier. It had a single engraving. MH. No middle name. No borrowed family. Just mine. The one I claimed for myself. The one they couldn't rewrite anymore. And that was the revenge. Not the letter. Not the article. Not even the truth. The revenge was living loud. Owning the story. Refusing to fade like they wanted me to. I was never their shame. I was never their secret. And now, the world knew it too.